The profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered, even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning, everyone. We have a guest speaker this morning, Zenki Mary Mocine. Many of you know her. Mary has given talks a number of times over the years at Stone Creek, and it's wonderful to welcome you back. So Zenki Mary Mocine founded and leads practice in Vallejo, the Vallejo Zen Center, also known as Clearwater Zendo. It's such a beautiful name. It comes from Dogen, as so much of our practice does. He said, clear water all the way to the bottom. A fish swims like a fish. And a Mary Mocine gives a talk like a Mary Mocine. And we listen as we are. And here we are together. So welcome, Mary. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. This is a little bit of an experiment, I guess. I've been thinking about love, and I'm a little bit allergic to the word. But not long, we've been studying in our senior seminar. We've been studying the Prajna Paramita in 8,000 lines, and it's about perfection of wisdom. It's about bodhisattva practice, and it's really hard line. The bodhisattva sees no distinctions. A bodhisattva doesn't see things. No. You think the Heart Sutra is tough, and somewhere in that, one of the participants said a week or so ago, she said, well, what about love? We never talk about love. And I don't remember what I said at the time, but I just found myself chewing on that. And I realized I am allergic to the word because it's so squishy and it's often used in a way that I experience as kind of glib. Someone will say, I believe in love. And I think, well, okay, so do I. But how to express it, how to live it, how to be intimate with it. What does that mean, that word? So I often talk about the other side, which is practicing with my and our hindrances. What gets in the way of my expression of love? What gets in the way of my ability to offer it? What gets in the way of my ability to accept it? And so on. See the hindrance, practice with the hindrance, turn towards the hindrance, allow the hindrance to go away, see what happens. So what about love? I'm trying not to say, what's love got to do with it? Love has everything to do with it, even though I don't know what it means. And I'm looking forward to a discussion about this, because I'm still kind of allergic to it. But I find that words that trigger me are often really useful. I mean, the first time I heard, I vow to save all beings, I thought, what? That's impossible. That now I find that word really useful. And we say here, I vow to save all beings. And the fact that the word triggers me and us is useful, I think, because then you have to chew on it. You have to wrestle with it. What does that mean? That's another lecture. I'm not going to go on with that, but I'm just saying that those words that trigger us can be really useful. So I've been chewing on, thinking about, sitting with, lecturing yesterday about love. And it's, I don't know, it's like we know it when we see it. I don't know. Right now I'm thinking it's a generosity of heart. An openness of heart. An offering of heart. And of course, there's all kinds of love. The Greeks talked about, I'm not going to go through it, but the Greeks talked about, I think they had 7 different kinds. Agape, which is maybe unconditional love, and maybe what I mean when I say that love grows out of emptiness, just as compassion grows out of emptiness, out of knowing connection in my bones, in your bones. It's hard to define in words, and I don't know if it's useful to go on and on to try to define it. It's one of those things like emptiness that continues to define itself to you as you contemplate it, as you get to know it in your bones, as you sit with it, not think about it, sit with it. And of course it changes. And this morning, I was looking for a quote in one of my favorite Dogen fascicles, which is The 4 Methods of Guidance of a Bodhisattva. And I got caught by it, reading it. And I thought, you know what? And so we don't talk about anything but love. It's just that we don't use, he uses the word, but we don't use it so much. And that may be, for me, it's partly about the squishiness of it. And, you know, little, what was that? Was it a Hallmark card or something that, I don't know. Anyway, it was like, love is never having to say you're sorry. No, love is nothing but saying you're sorry, right? Because who can trigger you more? Who do you hurt more? The people closest to you, right? The ones you love. You change the lyric, you always hurt the one you love. Well, it's a word that is so overused. But agape means, maybe you could say unconditional love, but a kind of a selfless love. Not this self, not those selves. So it's they in the piece I read after I Googled it, that described these 7 levels of love, or 7 kinds of love from the Greeks. The reference was to the love of Christ for human beings. And I was not raised a Christian, and so it doesn't have deep resonance for me, but it's part of our culture, and that will do, or the love of Buddha for all beings. So that's agape. And then the next one, the contrast, is eros, which is hot love, hot sexual love. And the Greeks thought that was dangerous. which it can be. And then I'm going to have to look at my list. I'm not going to talk about every one, but let's see. The next one is philia, which is affectionate love. It's like the love you have for your good friends. And philautia, probably, I think, philautia, self-love. These are all necessary things. Self-love here is not narcissism, it's the love that you need to have for yourself in order to have a foundation from which to practice. And in the Vasicle, the 4 methods of guidance of a bodhisattva, he talks about the first method is generosity. And he says things like, give yourself to yourself and others to others. And he quotes the Buddha saying, you must take care of yourself. And then he said, Dogen says, and so how much more so your parents and your children and whatever. But there needs to be a certain amount of, pardon the phrase, self-esteem. There needs to be a foundation. You know this. How can you be really generous if you're not taking care of yourself? So there's self-love. And I'm not sure about how to pronounce these words in ancient Greek. Storge, I guess, is familial love. So it's like philia, like love for your friends, but it's deeper. And the person doesn't say that, but it seems to me it's partly that sense of a blood connection. And it could, of course, include those people that you consider part of your family. Now I have people that are sort of aunties, or I did. And I consider them part of the family. And there's pragma, which is enduring love, which is like the love of an older couple that still hold hands when they go out, and it's not hot anymore, but it's an enduring, it sounds like comforting, comfortable love. And of course, it ends with mania, which is obsessive love, which we'll set aside for now. When Dogen talks about the 4 methods of guidance, he's saying that they're all necessary to a bodhisattva. And you could say, that would be a different lecture, but you could say that the bodhisattva is nothing but love. So the methods are generosity, kind speech, beneficial action, and what he calls identity action, not seeing a difference between yourself and others. And he thinks that you should you should know that the mind of a person who is giving communicates subtly with others. This is all because the giver is willing. And maybe that's another piece of defining love. It's a willingness. I'm willing to step forward into this. Then he talks about kind speech. You should know that kind speech arises from kind mind, and kind mind from the seed of compassionate mind. Kind speech is not just praising the merit of others. It has the power to turn the destiny of the nation. And you should always, throughout lifetimes, practice kind speech. And beneficial action is to skillfully benefit all classes of beings. And identity action means non-difference. And those strike me as elements of love. And you may be familiar with the instructions to the Tenzo. He says you should have joyous mind, magnanimous mind, and parental or grandparental mind. And he says explicitly that the parental mind is the mind of a parent who cares for their child. And only a person in whom this mind has arisen can understand it, this parental mind that loves and raises a child with care. How deep is a love like this? Only a parent can understand that. And then he goes on to say, only a person in whom this mind has arisen can understand it. Only one in whom this attitude has become second nature can fully realize it. And this is the ultimate in being a parent. In this same manner, you should handle water, rice, or anything. You must have the affectionate and caring concern of a parent who's raising a child. And of course, he says that you should, anyone in a position of responsibility should have this mind. So it seems to me he's talking about love. And my sense is that I do talk about it all the time, but I never use the word. That we talk about it all the time, and I don't know about, maybe it's used all the time at Stone Creek, I don't know, but it's unusual. I haven't heard many Zen talks about love. Lots about compassion. Lots about compassion. And I like to talk about usefulness, to be useful. But I think compassion grows out of emptiness, in the sense that when we completely let go, which happens occasionally. Uchiyama had a wonderful phrase, you open the hand of thought, when you stop grasping. Those times when there is an openness and a willingness in your heart, you can see connection. You can see, I can know that there's not a difference between you and me. Of course, there's a difference between you and me. Of course, I have a self. Of course, you have a self. And it's important, I think, to practice from a place, a grounded place that also knows there's nothing but connection. Nothing but connection. And from that comes compassion. Feeling with, suffering with others, because they're not separate from me. Isn't that love? They're not separate from me. So if you are shot by police, I'm shot by police. If you stand up to the Olympic Committee, I stand up to the Olympic Committee. so I can, from that empty heart, I can feel connection. And from that place, I can feel compassion, right? Because if you get, if we're not two, if you hit your thumb with a hammer, my thumb gets hit with a hammer. And I can act from that place of non-separation, and then I can be useful, not helpful, but useful. And that's compassion. And Dogen says, from a compassionate heart goes a kind heart. And I'd say a loving heart. It's a different kind. It's an agape kind of love, I think. I find it difficult to talk about love because I'm still allergic to it. Maybe I always will, I don't know. I mean, I always will be allergic to it. So that's a good reason to talk about it. And I'm finding I have a knot in my stomach. There's so many other things that's easy for me to talk about. So I would really like to hear how you think of love and how you think of what I'm saying. You know, I'm not talking about Hallmark love for sure. And I'm not saying that you don't ever set boundaries. But what is that? How do you experience it? Are you allergic to the word? I don't know. So please, is somebody else going to call on people, or should I call on people, or what?
It usually works for people to just unmute.
Okay.
And there seems to be a respectful sequencing to it that just arises.
All right.
Or people can raise their hands too, with the raise hand function.
Okay, but I had show 29 participants and my screen only has 25 people, so.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Roberta.
Huh?
Hi, I met you many years ago. I loved your talk today.
Thank you. Can you move your screen a tiny bit, because I can only see the bottom half, or that's it, that's fine.
Okay, I have to move my chair just a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I gotcha. I appreciated very much I was thinking this sometime recently that love is underrated. I believe during some of my Sangha community here in Stone Creek knows about a deep conflict I had with family members over anti and pro vaccine, amongst other things. And the discovery for me in doing healing, because I am close to my 4 children, grown children, and grandchildren to some extent. But I found that without love, there was no resolution. Love was the way. Love was the path. Love brought me into connection. Without connection, there's no way to resolve differences. So now we're able to say it lies somewhere in between. The parties that have been in conflict, we can say, oh, we may disagree, but somewhere in between lies the possibility. Unfortunately, the one person, a daughter whom I was particularly feeling sad and really this whole thing was an estrangement for me, we have come to recognize that it is in action that we create that relationship. It isn't in our ideas. And being together, doing things together, taking care of a 96-year-old aging now in hospice, a great cousin of hers, and visiting her has brought us closer to the essence of love. All of these kinds of activities do that. And without it, we don't have, even in your talk about agape is largely born out of our, I believe, our sense of self-love.
Thank you. Really?
I can jump in, Mary.
Thank you.
Let me see if anybody else. We're a little bit practicing with, like, you know, so there's some people who are ready to go, and then there's some people who need to digest more.
I understand that. I've learned to wait kind of a long time.
Yeah. And it's nice when there's room for that. You get to hear, you know, from different perspectives. But what I wanted to say is that over the last number of years, actually, Charlie and I, we're on a little bit of a mission to talk about love and Zen.
Oh.
I think one of Charlie's first talks was called the L word, like it was. But really, with that same feeling that you're expressing, that like practice is all about love. It really is. It's just, you know. Right. Actually, one of the things that came to me today is that word that maybe makes us feel icky is like the commodified version of love. But another piece that just is so alive for me is love is a verb. It's a how, like Roberta's pointing to. It's action. It's doing. It's not really a sensation or a feeling that just sits there. You know, and we can love people that we haven't interacted with for many years. But there's still the engagement of it, the doing of it. Yeah, the utility, like being useful, being engaged.
But it's a body sensation. You know, there's some way that you know it, that you can talk about it, but it is not only doing, well, maybe it's responding. Maybe it's responding, yeah. Anyway, thank you. The L word. Can I adopt that?
The other piece that I wanted to ask you about too, I was struck when you said, this is tricky. This is so tricky and so interesting to me in terms of practice, that, you know, there's the truth of, you know, if you're shot by the police, all beings are shot by the police. I'm shot, you know, or my child or someone I beloved, right? If I hold into that, then I can stay in human relationship with the tragedy that's unfolding. I think that's the essential ground. But then I feel like there's also this second layer, which is, and also I'm not shot when you're shot, you know? And
Well,
that's
right.
The dynamic of those both, you know? That's
right. But, you know, you can only talk about
I know.
one thing. Yes, of course. That's why I said, you know, of course I have a self, you have a self.
Yeah.
And I'm not separate from the cop.
Right. Yeah. And then there are these distinctions, right? Like and I'm less likely, you know, as a middle-aged white woman, I am less likely. I don't worry about getting pulled over for a bad taillight, you know, for example. And that it's love to engage the dynamic of the total connection and the total distinction. You know?
Yeah. I want to respond to your saying it's a how question, because Mel used to say, the question's not why, it's how. And Hoitsu Suzuki Roshi gave a lecture at Tassajara once, and he said, Zazen is how to do, how to do, how to do.
Thank you. Yeah, love is how to do, how to do.
That's true. Yes.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for your talk. Love, obviously, in the different aspects. I wanted to just touch on the squeamish aspect of love, which I have noticed sometimes, like in emailing 5 or 10 people, I'll sign love Tomas, and because I know these people, don't have a romantic relationship with them, but sometimes I get the feeling that that's a little too much, because I think from an ego point of view, like, it's sort of dangerous territory if someone expresses love to us, because we don't know exactly what they mean. Are they romantically in love with me? Do they want to have sex with me? Are they needy? All this kind of stuff. So it's sort of, I think you have to talk or speak love almost with a forked tongue, because it's such a delicate word.
Well, I don't know about a forked tongue exactly, but yeah, you do have to, and if you say it too lightly, because I sign emails love, and I notice, I don't know, I've written something, and there's this feeling comes up that I want to say that. Or I was writing to a friend, Nelson Foster, who lives near Nevada City, and I was worried about, whether to what extent they were impacted by the fire. And we have a very affectionate relationship, and I often sign my missives warmly. No, I don't want to say warmly. And so I thought I'll just say love, because that is how I feel about it. And he's fine, by the way, in case those of you who know him wondered, they're doing all right, and their saga's okay. At any rate, it is something to be aware of, and it can be used too lightly, and you don't always know. And one thing I'm aware of is that people often sign nowadays XOXOXO, and I always think it's sort of a little bit of a cop out. What is that? I mean, that means hugs and kisses in my sign vocabulary, but it doesn't. It just seems like you decided you didn't know what to use as whatever the opposite of salutation is. So you say XOXO. And Sarah's laughing, and Charlie is smiling. Anyway, somebody else?
I would like to ask you a question. I've been looking at the word sorry, and I read something about, and I'll just sort of say, when my actions have negative consequences and they're brought to my attention with a loved one, and I say sorry, well, I've tried to start saying thank you, because it's not just sorry is like an open question almost. Thank you, you acknowledge it, and it means something a little bit different than sorry. And I'm going back and forth. It's a very hard thing to do. Sorry is in our life so much, and it's a way we respond to some kind of a conflict in our love with another person. So can you comment on that?
Oh yeah. So I have so many things to say. I want to try to pause for a moment and think. Sorry is, I'm not allergic to the word particularly, but it's one of those words that could mean anything, partly depending on your tone of voice, and partly depending on how soon if somebody says you hurt my feeling sorry, well, was there a pause to reflect on it? No. And so on, and also what comes after it, sorry if you were upset is not an apology, right?
Right.
And on the other hand, I'm sorry that I was rude to you. That's an apology, so if it's just sorry, it does sound a little snarky. And it depends on the situation. So saying thank you can also, it so depends Mark, I assume you're Mark, that, you know, I
Yeah.
know that the name that shows up on the thing that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily. Anyway, that thank you can be said with different tones of voice and so on. Or it can sound sort of rote. You know, I'm one of the things I'm allergic to is people that say, thank you for your talk. I was wondering if you know, but it's, or here's one. And then I'm gonna say, I have lots of pet peeves. People that say, hi, how are you? And then just go right on talking because they're not really asking how I am. I don't know what it is. It's a verbal tick nowadays. So thank you and sorry can be like that. So I just think basically that it has to do with how open your heart is in that moment and how present you are, you know, and whether you go on to talk about it, you know, how they were affected or what was going on with you that you were unskillful, or maybe you don't think you were unskillful, you know, and so maybe you need to listen and whatever. So I just think, you know, I think thanking somebody for some feedback that you know points out something that you had not realized was thoughtless, you know, because sometimes we just say things we're not thinking of the long implications of them, whatever. That's fine, but I just don't think there's a formula for it, I guess. Is that useful?
It's very useful. I found my trying to get out of the habit of sorry and trying to be more responsive to a situation is why I've sort of taken up thank you.
Yeah,
but it has some of the same consequences depending on your attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, well, breath helps, you know, it's always good, you know, somebody with a complaint about you. You know, listen and then take a breath and feel the gathering in and then feel the exhale and then respond. See what happens.
Thank you.
Nothing like breath.
Mary,
Yes.
this is Holly.
Hi.
I'm interested, whole nother discussion maybe, but the idea of corruption of love, that it's used to manipulate. And I think of like, you go to some of these countries run by dictators or whatever, and people love their dear leader. And it's used to manipulate people. And I was wondering how you felt about that, or how do you deal with that?
We have it here, you know, you don't need to go to another country. I think it's back to, you know, the way it has an impact on me is dealing with people who are so enamored of Donald Trump and the big lie and are from that place anti-vaccination. I work with owning my anger and owning my hatred and feeling it in my body and remembering to breathe and attempting to listen and listening and practicing kind speech. And if it is somebody to whom I'm close, then remembering that there are other things that we have in common. I have family in the Midwest who are all Trump people. Well, I don't know, maybe the younger generation is not. I don't know them that well. I know the ones out here. Anyway, it's just, it's difficult practice, and it is our practice. And the fact that our hearts are manipulable is a fact. And we've all been manipulated by something, but not so big as that probably, but I don't know. I don't know if I ever bought something because I loved a commercial, but I certainly have loved a lot of commercials. And I know I'm being manipulated and entertained. Sometimes the commercial's better than the show. But I don't think there is, the answer is to, I commend to you the 4 methods of guidance of a bodhisattva. It's page 44 in Moon and a Dewdrop. It's also easy to find, just Google it. When he talks about kind speech, you just keep working with kind speech. And I like what Roberta said about doing things. You know, if it's somebody close, you know, go make cookies. Well, I don't know about going for a hike because that tends towards conversation, can be difficult. But just do things with people. But mostly keep breathing and keep rededicating yourself and keep paying attention. So when you give in to gossiping about Donald Trump, notice it. Notice it and see if you can stop. So hard.
Mary,
Yes.
hi, it's Donna.
Mhm.
I just wanted to, I'm having some thoughts about how pain, love is connected to pain, and it's very risky in the sense that we need to be open to it. But I think sometimes it's hard for us to be open to it because we know that on some level, at some point in time, there's going to be loss. And this is hitting home for me because I just recently lost a dear, dear brother. But I have been so touched by the love that has come to me as a result of his passing. And so that's all. I just think that sometimes it's hard for us to, and for me, to have an open heart because deep inside, I know that when I open up to the real deep love that I can have when I interact and connect with people, that at some point they or I will experience the loss of that.
Yes.
Want to know if you had some comments about that.
Well, I feel you, sister. I lost my sister a couple of years ago, and it's, I don't know, a sibling, because it's your flesh, you know, it's the not exact same, but it's the closest to DNA to yours, the closest flesh and blood to yours. And it's a loss of memories and so on. It's hard. But you're right. There is a pain involved, and Charlie probably knows the verse, but there's a verse from Buddha, you know, that everything that arises is bound to decay and die. Everything, and that includes those people and things that you love. And I think part of the pain, Mel said to me years ago, my teacher said to me years ago, that there's a way that mourning and grief is for yourself. Because I lost my sister. I mean, she's gone. She doesn't care. And it doesn't mean that it's selfish or wrong, but it is about me and my loss.
Well, and it also had the potential to bring me closer to people in my life, including family and friends, which indeed it did. And you know, the hope, of course, is that endures for all of us.
Yeah. Yes, and the memories are still there, and it's not quite the same because I was thinking yesterday, talking about family love and the loss of memories and being able to joke around. When we grew up, my sister and I, we were the only siblings. When we grew up, we lived near these two other girls that we played with every day and watched TV and went to birthday parties and you name it. And the older one was between me and my sister. And we competed for, my sister was the oldest of the four of us, so we competed for her attention. And this girl stole things from me, little things. And she was not always kind to me. And as we grew older, she was kind of clingy and needy and never mind. And it was difficult, not horrible, but difficult. And I was trying to be kind to her. At any rate, her birthday was August, or is, I guess, I don't know, August 17th, right? And when a few years ago, my sister called me up on August 17th and said, "Hi, happy Hannah's birthday." And we laughed because she knew that I knew that was her birthday, which is interesting. But also that I sure as hell wasn't going to call her up and wish her happy birthday. And that kind of, those connections, the references without, you don't have to explain, but I still have that, I remembered it and I can laugh at it. And I'm sure that on August 17th, I'll remember it. So my sister's here too. Thanks.
Yeah, Mary, thank you. Chad here.
Oh, there, okay, yes.
I've been thinking about love recently, and see where to start. I spoke a few years back when my grandfather was dying. I told him, I think maybe when you die, it's like you just dissolve into pure love. And he's a man who of the Depression generation, and when I told him I loved him, he wouldn't answer back, even though I felt that he loved me. But I think it was because love, the word, has been overused, and also it means so many different things, including that you can love something as desire, which is almost like the opposite of unconditional love. And so I've been trying on the idea recently that love is emptiness. And it's interesting that you said compassion comes out of emptiness. Maybe you can't say emptiness is anything, or you're already a step away from emptiness, but I've been working with that idea, and I guess it would make sense, and the idea that love is something which there is no opposite would point towards that as well. But it is a force. Maybe if we had a unified theory, love might be at the bottom of it all.
Well, I heard Brian Greene on the radio the other night. He has a new book out. You know who Brian Greene is? The Fabric of the Cosmos. I think he's a physicist. These things that get beyond me nowadays. And he did a Nova present series on the fabric of the cosmos. The episode on time is very useful and upsetting. Anyway, but the way he was talking to the interviewer, about, I think the book is called The End of Time. But at any rate, the way he was talking to the interviewer was so, towards the end, was so spiritual. And we need to be reminded of that there is something, and not a thing, you're right. You know, but you can't, you have to talk about it. You have to say something. You have to, you know, Mel used to say, you know, if you point a stick, the dog will go for the stick. Or you point a finger at the moon, don't go for the finger, look at the moon. But you need to point a finger. And I think we need to include love. And in the Prajna Paramita and 8,000 lines, we've been reading the verse part of it, which is long enough. But you know, it talks about how, you know, Bodhisattva, I'm going to be this is oversimplifying it. So, but a Bodhisattva lives in emptiness, sees no beings, sees no things, sees no distinctions.
Oh, well, welcome to today's talk.
What? Somebody said something that it overlapped. So at any rate, a Bodhisattva lives in emptiness and sees no thing, no self, no beings. And yet, a Bodhisattva, out of that, a Bodhisattva comes, this is not in the text, but I think it's implicit. There's a wellspring of love. Is that fair, Charlie?
We were just oh, sorry, Mary.
Well, there's a wellspring of love. And a Bodhisattva, from that, wants all beings to experience the ease and the joy of, I'm going to say, non-attachment. And from that place acts to benefit all beings. And I can read that, I can understand the words, but it's so hard for me to take it in. But there's a story that I think comes from the loving kindness section of the Visuddhimagga anyway, and I can't find it when I look for it, so I don't know. But at any rate, he said that Buddha said that you are not my disciple. You are not my disciple if you're out in a boat with some other people and a sea pirate boards your boat and says, I'm gonna take one of you, I need an oarsman. You are not my disciple if you say, take me, I'll go. And I chewed on that for quite a while. But that's the distinction. And so what would a Bodhisattva do? What would Buddha's disciple, what would happen? And I'm not gonna say how, I'm not gonna answer that. But that's something to chew on, because I think understanding the distinction that's being made is understanding the distinction about a Bodhisattva that's in the Prajnaparamita in 8,000 lines.
We were remembering, Mary, that the admonition, at least in the book that I studied of Perfection of Wisdom, 8,000 lines, the first thing.
Yes.
Call forth as much as you can of love, respect, and of faith.
That's
so it's
right.
like, human beings, you want to engage with this text, here are the qualities you need to be generating.
Right. Well, in the end of that, we say that, instead of the usual opening chant for lecture or whatever, that's what we chant to begin the seminar. And the last line is for heroic spirits intended. Now, this is not easy. That's one of the reasons for Sangha. We, to help each other along. We also challenge each other. We give each other lots of opportunities for practice. I think it's time to stop. Is that right? Anyway, thank you. Thank you for chewing on this with me.
So much, Mary. And we'll do the closing chant that's in the chat. For great Bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to free them.
Freedom.
Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to run them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to